Today, we're going to be talking about some of the most absurd murder mysteries that are still unsolved until this day. Each of the stories have been hand-selected by myself because they really spooked me, especially the last one. So stick around until the end because I have never heard anything like it. Before we get into today's video, if you're a fan of true crime, you're in luck because that's what we do all the time. So if that's what you're into, please like this video, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell because we upload every single day. Now, let's begin. "22-year-old Angela Hammond was beginning to put the pieces of her life together for the future. She was a popular young girl living in the small town of Clinton, Missouri, where she worked at a bank but also studied at Central Missouri State University. Life seemed to be perfectly falling in place for Angela, where in January 1991 she became pregnant and then engaged to the love of her life, Rob Schaffner, who was an athlete at the time, planning to join the military. Everything she ever dreamt of was beginning to become true. Her hometown of Clinton, Missouri was the perfect place to start the next chapter of her life. Beautiful landscapes, a warming hometown feel, but more importantly, the safety of knowing everyone. For Angela, there was no place safer anywhere in the world. Tragically, the town would forever be changed on the night of April the 4th, 1991. At around 10 p.m. that night, Angela had just dropped her fiancé Rob at his home after a family barbecue. They planned to meet later that night as he'd promised to babysit his younger brother until his mother got home from work. In the meantime, Angela had plans to spend the evening out with her friend Kayla, and Rob would join later. But after a long day of work, she decided that she'd prefer to go home and relax instead. Shortly after 11:15 p.m, Angela drove back to the convenience store car park where there was two payphones adjacent to each other. She often used payphones as she didn't have a phone in the trailer that she was living at. She parked opposite the payphone, got out of her car and then called Rob to let him know of the change of plans. Police reports say the phone conversation lasted about 15 minutes and the conversation between them seemed as normal as could be, until this. While talking to him, she noticed a suspicious man circling the block several times. When asked, she told Rob that it was a green Ford pickup truck and she hasn't seen it around the area and she can't see the driver well enough to profile him. After passing many times, it eventually pulled up close by. The man got out and used the payphone behind her. After a short conversation, he headed back to his truck and drove off. Angela was totally freaked out by this and began profiling the man and the vehicle to Rob. Shortly after, the truck returned once again, and this time he parked next to Angela's car only a few meters away. He slowly walked over and began using the payphone right next to Angela. Quietly, a scared Angela told Rob step by step what was happening, hoping that she didn't alert the strange man. Rob tried to calm Angie down, said it's probably someone that's lost and trying to make a call for directions. The man ended his conversation and began to walk back to his truck. This time, he took out a flashlight and started flashing it around his truck like he had lost something. Rob heard Angela pop her head out the phone booth and asked the man if he needed to use the phone. He replied he didn't, a response that left Angie and Rob concerned. At this point, Rob asked for a full description of the man, to which Angie replied he looked dirty and was a Caucasian man who had a mustache and glasses and was wearing overalls and a black baseball cap. The man went back to his truck, and so Angie turned around and continued with her conversation. But just moments later, Rob heard Angela's muffled scream and the phone drop. The last voice he heard on the phone wasn't Angela's. Chillingly, the last thing that Rob heard was the strange man saying, "I didn't need to use the phone anyway." He shouted for Angela through the phone, and after receiving no response and knowing that the payphone was just 7 blocks away from his home, Rob immediately ran outside to his car and sped towards the payphone located just 2 minutes away. As he was recklessly speeding towards Angie's last whereabouts, he saw a green Ford pickup truck driving towards him, similar to the one Angie had described minutes before. Seconds before passing, he saw what he described as a woman struggling with the driver, rolling down the window, and as he passed, he heard Angie scream out, "Robbie." It's the abductor and Angie heading off in a separate direction. In a panic, he threw his car in reverse, unknowingly damaging the transmission. He followed the truck for 2 or so miles before the transmission has failed, as he had made a sharp right turn. He could do nothing but watch in horror as the taillights of the green Ford pickup truck vanished into the darkness of a gravel road in the distance, kicking up dirt behind it. Unfortunately, this would be the last time anyone would ever see Angela Hammond. 2 days later, Angela's abduction was connected to another unsolved case within a 100-mile radius. Both women were abducted outside a convenience store, and one was proven to be violently assaulted and killed, whilst the other woman is still missing. Like Angie, authorities now fear that a serial killer may be on the loose in west central Missouri. The Hinterkaifeck farmstead was an isolated place, located near the woods outside the Bavarian town of Groben, which was about an hour's drive from Munich and half a mile from the town of Kaifeck. This was home to 35-year-old Victoria Gruber and her 2 children, Kazilla and 2-year-old Joseph, as well as her elderly parents Andreas and Kazilla Gruber. The family was known for keeping to themselves. Still, neighbours grew concerned on April 1st, 1922, when Victoria's young daughter, Kazilla, missed school and the entire family failed to show up to the church where Victoria was a member of the choir. Young Kazilla missed school again on April 3rd, and by then, mail for the family had begun to pile up at the local post office. On April 4th, the family's neighbours decided to investigate the family's farm. Lorenz, her neighbour, who was a farmer who lived nearby, led the search party on that day. What they discovered disturbed them for the rest of their days and haunted the country of Germany. In the barn next to their house, the search party found 4 brutally battered bodies piled up together, concealed in hay. It's likely that they were lured into the barn one by one and viciously slaughtered. Inside the house, they sadly discovered the bodies of 2-year-old Joseph and the maid Maria, who had met a similar fate. It was Maria's first day on the job, and the previous maid had abandoned her position due to an avid belief that the house and farm were haunted. The reports from the family's autopsies paint a horrifying picture of the injuries. The mother of Victoria, Kazilla, showed signs of strangulation and 7 blows to the head, which left her with a cracked skull. The face of her husband, Andreas, was caked in blood, with his cheekbones fully revealed between shredded flesh on his face. Victoria's skull was also smashed. Her head showed 9 star-shaped wounds, and the right side of her face had been hit with a blunt object. The younger 7-year-old Kazilla's lower jaw had been shattered, and her face and neck was covered in gaping circular wounds, while the elder Kazilla, Andreas and Victoria likely died instantly from the expertly delivered blows from a pickaxe tool used for digging and chopping. The autopsy found that younger Kazilla likely remained alive in shock for several hours after her attack. She was so scared she had ripped her own hair out in clumps after her attack. Inside the farmhouse, little Joseph and the maid Maria had met similar fate. Maria was also killed by a blow to the head in her bedroom, and Joseph by a heavy blow to the face in his cot in Victoria's room. Similar to the bodies in the barn, they were also concealed. Maria's body was covered with her sheets, and Joseph with one of his mother's dresses. The farm animals and Pomeranian watchdog remained unharmed. Chillingly, they had even been taken care of and fed several days between the murders and the terrible discovery. Police initially suspected drifters or other travelling men of ill repute, but this theory was closed down after large sums of money was found within the house. Besides the bodies being concealed, nothing had been disturbed. The killer clearly remained at the farm for several days, feeding the animals, eating their food, and lighting fires on the land. When police questioned the former maid about the belief of the property being haunted, she said that she had come to the conclusion after constantly hearing sounds in the attic and experiencing an unsettling feeling of being watched. Although Andreas claimed to not believe her, he too had confessed to his neighbours about strange happenings in the days before the murder. A newspaper he did not buy was found in his home, and a set of footsteps was discovered leading from the forest to the farm steps. The footsteps were in pristine, unmarked snow leading in only one direction. Nobody at Hinterkaifeck know who they belong to. To make matters even stranger, one of the two sets of keys disappeared shortly before the murder. Combined with the footsteps from the woods, sounds in the attic, a smoking chimney in the days following the crime, these odd details paint a horrifying picture of a ruthless intruder who also decided to stay around after he was finished with his heinous crimes. Nearly 100 years later, dozens of people have been arrested as suspects in the crimes, although no one has ever been found guilty. The Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Germany's eeriest, most notorious unsolved crimes. At this point, it seems unlikely that the public will ever know who committed these murders or why. Whatever the secrets the Gruber family kept in their life and death, they now rest alongside them in their grave. Katarzyna Zawoda was a 23-year-old student who attended university in Krakow, Poland. After her father tragically died, she found herself changing field 2 times before she became infatuated in religious studies. During this time, she was diagnosed with severe depression and even tried to commit suicide once before. This led her to start being treated at a psychiatric hospital. At the time, she lived with her mum and had a very quiet social life as she didn't have many friends, so she was mostly alone. On November 12, 1998, Zawoda was supposed to meet her mum at the hospital because she had a planned appointment at the psychiatric clinic. But when she never arrived, her mother started to worry that Zawoda had tried to hurt herself again. It was unlike Zawoda, as she was usually very punctual and never missed any appointments, especially medical ones. Therefore, her mother reported it to the police. For 2 months, they found nothing. It was like she was gone without a trace, vanished into thin air. This all changed on January the 6th, 1999, when the crew of an elk pusher boat was cruising along the scenic river Vistula, which is the longest river in Poland and the 9th longest river in Europe. What they had found that day would never be forgotten. The boat began to make a strange noise. Concerned that it was a mechanical issue, they inspected the engine. Upon the inspection, the crew found what looked like to be a strange material tangled up in the propeller. They described it as long, pale and spotted and smelt horrendous. After looking closer, they described it as a full-body skin suit which was missing arms and the frontal face with a human ear attached to it. In terror, they called the police, who sent a forensic team to take a closer look. After the examination, they confirmed it was the skin of Zawoda with her DNA, and it seemed to be in the river for about 2 or 3 weeks. Zawoda's skin had been removed with surgical precision and was prepared to be worn as a suit, which was similar to another case in the area already. They suggested that the poor girl was skinned alive and could see that she dealt with tremendous torture beforehand. Her severed leg and a few pieces of clothing was found along the river. However, her head and other limbs and bones and internal organs were never found. Investigators and experts from other countries were called to assist upon solving the crime, including the FBI. In May 1999, the Forensic Medicine Unit in Krakow received the corpse of a man with a severed and scalped head. The killer, Vladimir, turned out to be the son of the victim. Prior to the arrest, he was seen in a mask made of skin pulled from the head of his own father. Initially, investigators suspected that Vladimir committed Zawoda's murder. However, no evidence was found to support it. He was later charged with his father's murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. After a few years, he was transferred to a prison in Russia at his own request. A year later, the investigation was formally dropped because the perpetrator had not been discovered, but police officers involved in the case continued investigating credible leads. Later, investigators concluded that the attacker used a sharp tool to wound his victim on the neck, armpit and groin to inflict pain. In 2014, an FBI representative for Europe created a psychological profile for the subject. In 2016, it was confirmed that Zawoda was tortured before her death, and due to the injuries, police believe that the perpetrator was probably trained in martial arts, specifically one particular undisclosed variant. Police made the first arrest in October 2017, 19 years later. After discovering new evidence, a 52-year-old man named Winging Robert Jr. was arrested on suspicion of being a killer who tortured and skinned Zuoda before using her skin to make a suit. Investigators searched his apartment and found blood in the bathroom. As a result, the bath and the frame were secured for further testing. He was already on the radar of police investigation in 1999, but had not been arrested. Robert J. fit the psychological profile as he was trained in martial arts, knew the victim, and visited the victim's grave and had a long history in harassing women. He had previously worked in a dissecting lab where he dealt with human corpses. He also worked at Krakow Institute of Zoology where he would observe and process the preparing of animal skins. His employment was terminated the day after he killed all of the institute's rabbit during his shift. Robert J. couldn't explain his actions. The police detained him after receiving a letter from the suspect's friend. The contents of the letter are a closely guarded secret of the investigation. Robert Jr. was charged with aggravated murder with particular cruelty. He maintains that he did not know Zuoda. That wraps up today's story. If you found this one interesting, please like this video, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one.